Hello everyone, Jared here, and in today's video, we're heading off to what's going to be our final destination on the trip before returning to Wuhan, the city of Xiangyang. But before we can get to Xiangyang, we have to stop for the night in Wuhan, which means we're going to be spending just a short amount of time in Wuhan before we return back here at the end of the trip. So, as we passed by Wuhan's famous East Lake landmark, which is actually rather close to where my apartment was in China, we pulled on into the high-speed rail station and then took the subway in order to get to our hotel all the way in the western part of the city across the river in Xiangyang. And it was outside the window here on about the 20th floor where we were able to see this spectacular view. As you could probably tell, our hotel was just a short ways away from the river, which happens to be the Xiangyang, or Yangtze, as it's known in English. And not wanting to waste this opportunity seeing the city from the other side of the river, I decided to take some shots outside the window. It was my first time being in Xiangyang, despite living in Wuhan for about 5 months before this. And as far as I knew, there wasn't really anything here except newer apartment buildings. But at least the one thing it did provide was this great view, particularly this bridge right next to us. The furthest that we could see in the distance from our hotel room was this really tall tower, which happens to be the tallest building in Wuhan and still under construction. And despite its impressive size, it's only the 13th tallest building in all of China, but definitely the tallest one in central China for sure. I really enjoyed looking down at all the boats that were crossing back and forth on the river, looking to see whatever kind of cargo they were carrying, as well as looking out across the way and seeing the Yellow Crane Tower in the distance. The first video I uploaded onto this channel about Wuhan includes more footage of it from up close, if you want to see that. But anyways, pretty much for the afternoon and evening, we mostly stayed inside the hotel resting, because from all the traveling we'd been doing on the trip so far, we were finally starting to feel a little bit fatigued. And we knew we were just going to be coming back here after heading off to Xiangyang, so we had ample opportunities still to go around the city to see more of it. And it was here I decided to test something that I had never done before with my camera, a time-lapse video, looking out at the Yellow Crane Tower as it turned slowly to night. I was actually surprised by how dark it seemed when it finally turned to night, with the exception of some buildings down close to the river, as well as some boats that were passing by under the bridges on the water. Heck, even the bridge was dark for a while, with us barely being able to see any of the archways, until after about a half hour or so, when everything finally lit up. And when I say everything lit up, I mean the entire city, for the most part, lights up in a brilliant show at night that's unlike any other city around the world that I've seen, with hundreds of buildings simultaneously putting on a show, all synced up to one another as part of one giant performance. As far as I'm aware, this might be the largest light show around the world, and usually it starts around 8 o'clock at night. Anyways, this was actually a bit of a surprise for us to see because I knew about it, but I really wasn't expecting it since I didn't know if it was on just a few days of the year when they had it or if it was all year round. And it appears that this show happens to be every single night as long as the weather's fine enough. So if you happen to come to Wuhan, you definitely don't want to miss it. And you can look at all these boats that are passing by on the river as well, which also take part in the festivities. Maybe, if you get the chance, you can actually go on one of these instead, and look at all the buildings from down on the water. All in all, the light show lasts for probably around an hour, so you definitely get your money's worth, although technically you don't have to pay a cent to see any of it. Thankfully, this light show turned what I thought was going to be a rather boring day without any footage to show you, into one of my more fond memories of the city, and my time spent living there. Eventually, we went to sleep and woke up the next morning to head off to the high-speed rail station in Hankou on the same side of the river for our 10 or 11 o'clock train to Xiangyang City. and as we passed on by, we saw the westward expansion of Wuhan's skyrises, before eventually hitting the countryside, and passing by even smaller cities that likewise were experiencing a great period of growth. After only a couple of hours, however, we slowly pulled our way towards Xiangyang, went across the river that divides the city in two parts, and ended up taking a taxi yet again to our hotel in the northeast part of the city. And looking outside of our window, it wasn't really the prettiest sight because of all the pollution. But we tried to make the most of things, walking around the malls near our hotel that were pretty empty for the most part on the inside, but they did have some businesses with some silly English names on them yet again. Unlike the inside, however, the outside of the mall was definitely popular, as there were a whole lot of attractions and small rides for kids to get on. There were also a lot of these small cars all over the place, so you had to be careful where you were going. And this one in particular I'd never seen before and thought that this kind of machine actually looked kind of cool. Anyways, there were also a few bizarre things here too, such as the Eiffel Tower, and also a dinosaur. I don't really understand what the theme of this place was. But anyways, that was pretty much it for our first afternoon and evening in Xiangyang. And I really can't wait to show you what happens on the next day, as it's truly special. But before we get to that, I just want to say, we've come a long way since starting our trip together in Shanghai around a month and a half ago, with very little knowledge on what we would see at each location we arrived at across China. Despite many unplanned setbacks in our vacation due to health issues earlier on, Xi'an, with all of its ancient sites and crowded tourist streets, fortunately brought an end to that for a while, allowing us to enjoy Chengdu and beyond with very few issues for the most part. Following along with us on our journey so far, you've been able to see museums full of ancient and invaluable artifacts, plenty of food, both good and bad, the rare fuzzy black and white panda, as well as fantastical sights preserved through time despite wear and tear over centuries, such as the Lushan Buddha and cliffside temple ruins of the Shunan Bamboo Sea. But as we began to head south from Chongqing to Kunming, the trip began to undergo a thematic change, from towering neon cities with packed tourism areas and large historic monuments, to a calmer, greener, and more natural world, full of diversity with ethnic customs and traditions yet to be fully assimilated into the greater Han Chinese culture. Kunming was just the beginning of our foray into learning about and experiencing what life is like among China's minorities, because as we made our way further east through Guizhou province and out towards Guilin, we saw art exhibits sponsored and created by native peoples, extravagant craftsmanship through gold and silver jewelry, and traditional garments still used by the peoples of the regions today, in a variety of special occasions and occupations, such as the welcoming ceremonies at the Miao people's Xiangyang village, which happens to be the largest and oldest of its kind in China today. We also went to smaller, more rural places, such as the Dong minority's Jiaoxing village, where the views are picturesque at both day and at night. Once we left that region for Guilin and Changsha as the start of our last leg on this trip, we had to slowly readjust to city life yet again, being amongst the crowds at tourist attractions and cities, and, unfortunately, returning to much more heavily polluted air. But that's not to say everything in these cities was bad. Actually, there's a lot worth seeing and experiencing in these places too, if you get the chance. And now, as our journey comes closer to its end, with our final location outside of Wuhan being the city of Xiangyang, I have one final treat for you all to see, the most surprising, awe-inspiring, and fantastical location we had yet to experience on our long trip throughout China during the summer. So, I hope you're looking forward to seeing it. Until next time. Thank you again for watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. Also, please share this channel with others so we can make the channel grow together as I continue to put out more videos.